Hi friends, it's Deanna Williston from Our Blooming Catholic Life, and I just snuck out here to my porch. I was going to start reading this book. It was one that came in a subscription box this month, Our Wild Calling, and I was so pleased that I got this one. There's 3 books that you might get, and this is the one that I got. I was really hoping to get it. And why? Because it's written by Richard. I don't know if I can say his last name. Is it Louv? He's the author of Last Child in the Woods. Does anybody remember that book? It really made the case for getting kids out there. What was it called? Like attention deficit disorder, but it was like nature deficit disorder. And he really talked about how we need to get kids off. It wasn't even screens then. It was before that time, really. It was get kids away from big video games, from being inside all the time. Like, kids need to spend time in wild, creative play, building forts, running around, using their imagination, interacting with insects and animals. Like, they needed to be outside learning about nature and trees. And so much of what I talk about is that, like, you need to get out. You need to know your local environment. Even as an adult, we need that time out there. God didn't create us in a vacuum. He gave us this earth, and we need to get out there and explore it and get to know it. There's so many lessons in how God reveals himself through nature, and we need to get out there. That last bit was me, not the author of the book. Anyway, I'm going to open the book and see what else it is inside. What is this talking about? I'm going to read a little bit from the dust jacket. Nah, you can do that yourself. It's basically, we need to get out there and make the bond with animals. And he's going to look at it in several different ways. So I'm kind of excited about that. And what does it say? We are threatened by environmental disruption and neglect. Our wild calling makes the case for protecting, promoting, and creating a sustainable and shared habitat for all creatures, not out of fear, but out of love. This is what he calls the habitat of the heart. Ooh, and it talks about making real connections. And I think we all really appreciate that right now with all the screen time and social media and then the pandemic. Are we making real connections? And so that's what this book is about. It's about a habitat in the heart and making connections and relationship. And we talk about that so much on this channel. So I was excited, ran back in and got my iPad and my mic, and here we are. So there's 2 quotes in the beginning. Oh, wait. Let's stop. Okay, this is the book with the jacket on, with it off. It's actually a lovely orange color, which is not something I say often. It is published by Algonquin Books of Chapel Hill, which is a post office box in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. That seems weird to me. It's really a division of Workman Publishing in New York, New York. It is copyrighted in 2019, all rights reserved, U.S., printed in Canada, ... Excerpt from Dreamwork. Oh, so he has several little things here that he must use later on in the book. So he actually lists where he got his sites from and their copyrights and stuff. So he must have gotten permission to use quoted material. And then it starts out with 2 quotes. The first one says, "With their parallel lives, animals offer man a companionship different from any offered by human exchange." Different because it is companionship offered to the loneliness of man as a species. And that was John Berger in About Looking. And then we have Black Elk in Black Elk Speaks, which is a little weird to me. I'm thinking that that's a book about Black Elk, the Native American who is up for his cause has been opened, I think, for sainthood in the Catholic Church. So that must be a biography about him. It says, "I looked about me once again, and suddenly the dancing horses without number changed into animals of every kind, and into all the fowls that are, and all these fled back to 4 quarters of the world from whence the horses came, and vanished." No idea. I haven't read that book on Black Elk, but I think I would like to. It sounds interesting just from that little bit. Table of contents. This is probably our normal Times New Roman, and then the headers are in a different font, a little bit larger, and they're bolded. Maybe not. Just the part ones, and then I would say like part 1. See, it's different, but then it's just Times New Roman in bold. Ish. Can't guarantee it's Times New Roman. And then see the subheadings, how they get both. They change fonts as well as the bold to let you know how that outline's working, which is really interesting. I love it when people do that because it's not just, it's literally giving you an outline, but then it's also using visual clues such as the boldness, the size of the font, as well as different fonts. So part 1 is beautiful acts, life-changing encounters with species not our own. 2 is what the wild heart still knows, the art and science of communicating with other animals. 3 is how we co-become wonder dogs and werecats, therapy lizards and robot pets. I have no idea. Part 4 is the age of connectedness, creating a home for all creatures. And part 5 is wild souls, love, humility, and the principle of reciprocity. Yeah, you can see why as a Franciscan, this book is really calling out to me. And then there are acknowledgments, notes, suggested reading, and an index. Very interesting. And of course, there's totally multiple subheadings in here. And they list each of these little ones separately. On the jacket, it said, let's see here, that he spent 4 years talking with researchers, theologians, wildlife experts, indigenous healers, psychologists, and others to show how people are communicating with animals in ancient and new ways. And I thought I was going to say what different articles. I think that some of these are stories, some of these are scientific articles, so they take a variety of formats, and that's part of the strength of this book and what's going to keep it interesting. It's not huge. The book itself, I'm trying to get to the actual book, is about 273 pages. And at the end of it, then is the acknowledgments. So the acknowledgments are all the way at the end. And then notes. So end notes. You know, I often prefer footnotes. These seem mostly to be don't be notes, but citations. So if they're citations, yeah, put them at the end. So maybe that's okay. End notes. If these are all citations and they do look like it, these look like, yeah, these don't look like notes, like explaining for something further in the footnotes, which does happen a lot. So putting just citations at the end, that works for me. Oops, and then I skipped over what it was. And then suggested reading. They are alphabetical by author. They're definitely smaller and they feel a little bit harder to read. But there's a lot here. I mean, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's like 5 pages. I mean, sides, right? So 2.5 pages if you're going to front and back, plus 1 more. And at the end, then there's online resources. So there's just like, I think 4 or 5 here that are websites that he's recommending. Index is done alphabetically where there's a name. It seems to be alpha by last name, so pretty standard stuff there. There's a lot. They really did a nice job. There's a lot here in the indexes. I mean, there's page after page of this. So they really took the time to write it out so you can come back and really access this information. Oh, funny, Island of the Blue Dolphins? I read that in like middle school. Why is this in here? What is jaguarness? This is really, really interesting stuff in here. He talks about the empathy of infants. What is going on? Okay, friends, I am like 9 minutes in. I have to read this. I'm going to start the introduction with you, and then I'll jump out, read it myself, and come back and finish the review. I may break this into 2 parts so it's not too long for you. Let's see. Introduction. A mystery. A few years ago, at an isolated camp on Alaska's Kodiak Island, I walked up a path through the woods at the edge of a still lake. I was heading to the main lodge to meet my son, who worked there during his college summers. The light was fading. Usually, when I walked this path, I was watchful. On this island, massive brown bears often followed the shoreline, sometimes wandering into the camp. But on this evening, my eyes were down as I thumbed through the contents of my wallet. When I glanced up, I was startled by 2 piercing eyes. They shone like the stars. A black fox stood 3 feet in front of me. The foxes on Kodiak are among the largest in the world. This one was the size of a coyote. Its gaze was disconcerting, and it wasn't budging. We stared at each other for what seemed like minutes, but was probably only seconds. In those eyes, I felt a distant kinship, or perhaps only the sons of a parallel universe. The fox held perfectly still. Was it anticipating food? Not likely. The lodge's policy was to not feed wild animals. Or was it rabid? I stepped forward. The fox moved aside and continued to watch. I lifted my hand and said, "I'm going to the lodge. Would you like to come with me?" Early there that year, I noticed how aquatic iguanas and sea lion basked within inches of each other on volcanic ledges of the Galapagos Islands. When I asked a naturalist how each species perceived the other, he said, "To the iguana, the sea lion is just another part of the landscape. That's all." To the fox, then, was I just another part of the landscape? The British writer, painter, and art critic John Berger, in his famous 1977 essay, Why Look at Animals, describes how wild creatures' gaze unnerves us by forcing us to see ourselves across an abyss through unfamiliar lens. The fox followed me towards the building. Several yards from the door, it veered off and dissolved into the high grass. Today, I recall few significant details about most of the people I met that summer in the Alaskan camp, but that black fox's eyes are still watching. Oh, friends, this is captivating. Okay, I may have to sit here and read this for a while. Yeah, I'll get to bed eventually. Good night, friends, and God bless.